So here are at least 5 things that I do as a consumer to buy, to own my buying power and take it back and own it. And I think the most important part was having to start off and saying, what do I stand for? What do I believe? What is my value position in terms of my outlook of where I live, my community, my country, the world that I want my children to inherit, and also future generations. And with that, I was able to then say, I care about the environment and its sustainability. I care about ethics and the responsibility of nurturing the environment while we're producing these products that are required for production, for livelihoods, and so forth. And because of that, I also respect or value how companies respect their employees, their value chain and the processes, and also fair trade, right? Because we live in a country, or at least in a world, where there's still some inequalities in terms of market access and all of that. So I do care about the conditions of those things. And so when I want to make a purchase, I look at how the product that I'm excited to purchase, who has produced it, and if I care enough, I will then start firstly supporting ethical and sustainable brands. And most of them share this, by the way, through their platforms, or even most importantly, their financial or annual reports. Secondly, I then consciously invest in companies that have social impact. I value education, and not only academic education, but also through sports. I mean, in South Africa, there's still some schools that don't have access to quite a variety of sports. So I also encourage, businesses or brands to look into not just offering bursaries for academics, but also bursaries for sports and scholarships and so forth, so that kids can grow up with a holistic approach in terms of experience in life. But also because social impact, or rather impact investing, has become so important in our world, considering how, especially the environmental part of our economy is growing, right? Is going. And that's because we've seen a whole lot of climate change. We've seen how governments don't have enough fiscal maneuver to be able to deal with shock after shock, whether it's floods, heavy rains, or earthquakes, or any of those disastrous climate-related conditions. And people get displaced, people, lose their homes. And so you want to invest in things that will kind of maintain the well-being of the earth, and also give it enough time to refine itself. If deforestation processes, you want the companies that are conscious about where the environment is going, because ultimately the climate change affects all of us. And then thirdly, I like to leverage on movements that are happening, right? Because sometimes, because of the kind of organizations I sometimes represent, I do need to be responsible about my advocacy, but that doesn't keep me quiet in terms of the causes that I can support, right? So if there's a boycott or an advocacy going, Black Lives Matter, which is important for equality, or hair brand products that are not safe, for example, and I will have my support through those organizations, because I believe in the cause of the greater good. But sometimes my voice can't be, or I can't be the face of that that cause, but I can still support it. Then I think the fourth thing is being intentional about supporting local brands. And I know it's really tough when you have a Shein, for example, or an Alibaba that can produce these things at very cheap prices and at very massive scale and volumes. But it's just to also just be conscious that if I do support, or mainly support, or buy things mainly from those areas, yes, they may be cheaper to bring in, but the conditions often of how those things are produced do not necessarily align with my value system of, human rights being maintained, child protection, and also using ethical products and material to produce these things. So it's one of those things that it can be tricky because you're thinking, I can't find this cheaper in SA and I can get it from there. And then you think, oh, I'll just make one purchase. But ultimately, you've also added to, to the pain that is being caused in the world. But being conscious about it and being self-aware of my purchases has also made me kind of not buy a lot, because also we just like to have stuff. So I think that's also, built a discipline in saying minimalism is also good. It's actually the luxury or the wealth of being human, because ultimately you can still be a generous giver without having lots of stuff. And I think my final point will be just being responsible in owning that, yes, when brands market their products, they make us feel like we need them. We need these products. And so we do, and that's why we purchase them. But I think it's important for all of us to have the courage to demand of these brands their transparency in terms of, are they really aligned with my value system? Because I mean, as an individual, I won't be able to produce all the products that I want to consume. I mean, I don't have the skill, I don't have the, you know what I mean? I'm good at what I can do as an economist, for example, and rely on everyone else's creativity and talent to produce the things that I probably would use. And so demanding that transparency, or at least the accountability, whether they share it through, because not all companies are public, right? And they don't all share their annual reports, but through their branding, through their voice and whatever you get to follow, you get to hear if the message is really aligned with your value system and your way of life. But it's important to do research. So a lot of us don't really even read some of the ingredients that are in our products that we purchase. We don't even read where it was manufactured or how it was manufactured. And I think it's very good. Perhaps it's the curious, critical thinker in me who's like, okay, if they're using this product, how is this? And you say, for example, you're buying chewing gum, right? And you want one that's with xylitol, because it strengthens your enamel and, strengthens, it gives you an ability to not have stains, right, on your teeth. So you want to know, is this xylitol? How is it made? What kind of formation is it? And you just be curious to understand, like, okay, is it the real xylitol? Is it, where do they get it? What kind of plants do they use? And just be curious about it. I mean, it can just be one thing. I'm not saying go and do an essay about all the products that you have in your house, but start thinking about, okay, they say they have cotton, and you know that cotton feels how it comes up, it's not necessarily a t-shirt. So what processes do they use to get to the t-shirt part that still makes 100% cotton you're happy with, but that process of coming up with your t-shirt has also other dye and all of, other material that is inclusive in creating the final product. And are you happy with those processes? And if not, it's not to say I'm not going to buy any more from that brand. Sometimes, feedback is so important. And through your demand for transparency and accountability, I found that giving a brand's feedback actually helps them. Sometimes they don't hear me, they're too big to hear my one complaint, but I've had some responses, particularly from smaller businesses, that actually help them propel and refine their products and their service. So I think ultimately it's just knowing that you are responsible, not just as a consumer, but because as consumers, we think, we're not the ones using animals to test products, but I'm using those products ultimately. So I'm also accountable on keeping those businesses in power. And if I don't voice it out that it's not okay to do it this way, other people will also keep quiet. And it starts that small. You don't have to be a Nelson Mandela to revolutionize an organization or a brand, but you can as a voice and say, I really love your brand, I really love your products, but I am concerned about how you're making them. And I want to reserve my money to people who create products that care for these 5 values that I have for myself, which ultimately can be common, really. With many other people around the world. So it's not really like we have extremely high standards, but these are common standards that maintain human rights, that maintain respect for all, and thrive on diversity as well.